There is a white powder sitting quietly in warehouses right now. It costs less than $2, and it can erase years of stains in your home in under 30 minutes. Toilet rings, rust in your sink, mineral buildup in your bathtub, gone. No scrubbing, no harsh fumes, no expensive tools. Just one simple reaction, and the stain disappears. So here's the question you should be asking yourself right now. If something this cheap works this well, why have you never been told about it? Why are you still buying products that need to be used every week, every month, every year? Because the truth is simple. A solution that works once does not sell twice. And this powder, it doesn't just clean, it ends the problem. Completely. There is no fading, no temporary improvement, no good enough result. The stain doesn't get lighter. It stops existing. And yet almost no one talks about it. Not because it's rare, not because it's difficult to use, but because once you understand what it does, you stop needing everything else. Think about that for a second. Every bottle, every gel, every cleaner promising powerful results. What if they were never designed to fully solve the problem? What if they were designed to keep you coming back? Because the moment a stain is gone for good, the cycle ends. And when the cycle ends, so do the sales. This isn't a new discovery. This isn't a secret formula. This is oxalic acid, a compound discovered over 200 years ago, used by factories, by households, by professionals who needed real results. Not temporary fixes. Real results. It works on the stains you've been fighting for years. Calcium buildup, iron rust, dark mineral deposits. Not by scrubbing them away, but by changing them, breaking them down at a level you cannot see, until there is nothing left to hold onto the surface. So when you rinse, there is nothing left behind. No layer, no residue, no return. And that's the part most people never hear, because it changes everything. It turns cleaning from effort into understanding. It replaces repetition with resolution. It removes the need to try harder, and replaces it with doing it correctly once. So the next time you see a stain that won't go away, ask yourself a different question. Is it really permanent? Or have you just never been shown the method that actually works? Because once you see the difference, you don't go back, you don't scrub harder, you don't buy stronger chemicals, you don't repeat the same cycle, you step out of it. All it takes is one small bag of white powder. And the moment you use it, you'll understand why you were never told. You were never dealing with a difficult stain, you were dealing with the wrong solution. It was never about scrubbing harder, or buying something stronger, or trying again and again. It was about using a method that was never designed to fully solve the problem. Because when a solution only works temporarily, it guarantees one thing: you will need it again, and again, and again, until repetition feels normal. But the moment you switch to something that actually works at the root, the cycle stops, not because the stain changed, but because your method finally did. The compound is called oxalic acid, first identified in 1776 by chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele, while studying natural plant extracts. What he discovered was not just another substance, but a compound capable of breaking down mineral deposits at their core, not covering them, not weakening them, but dissolving them completely. By the early 1800s, it was already being used across Europe in textile factories to remove iron stains from fabrics before dyeing, because it worked quickly and reliably. Soon after, households began using it to clean stone sinks, ceramic basins, and surfaces affected by hard water. By the 20th century, it had become a standard cleaning agent in both domestic and industrial settings, even appearing in sanitation practices where consistent results were required. This was never a hidden trick or a niche product. It was widely known, widely used, and trusted because it solved the problem at its source. Not just on the surface, but something changed. Not in the chemistry, not in how the compound works, but in what people were told about it. And more importantly, what they stopped being told. Because once a method disappears from everyday knowledge, it might as well not exist. Here's what most people never realize about stains in their bathroom. They are not just dirt sitting on the surface. They are mineral deposits that have bonded to it. What you see as a yellow ring, a rough white layer, or a dark stain is usually made from calcium, iron, or manganese carried by water over time. These minerals don't just sit loosely. They attach, they harden, and they build layers that become increasingly difficult to remove with physical force. That's why scrubbing feels like it works but never fully solves the problem. You're only removing part of the surface while the deeper structure remains intact, ready to rebuild again. Oxalic acid works in a completely different way. It doesn't rely on friction or force. It relies on reaction. It interacts with these minerals at a chemical level, transforming them into forms that no longer adhere to the surface and can dissolve in water. So instead of fighting the stain from the outside, It removes it from within, and when you rinse, there is nothing left behind to come back. So if something works this effectively, if it can remove years of buildup in a single use and prevent it from returning, then the obvious question becomes, why isn't everyone already using it? Why isn't it the first solution you see on every shelf? And why does it feel like you're hearing about it for the first time? Over time, the way cleaning products were developed and sold began to shift. Not because the chemistry suddenly became better, but because the business model changed. A solution that permanently removes a problem is only needed once, but a solution that works partially and requires regular use becomes part of a routine. And routines create consistency, not just in results, but in purchasing behavior. When a product needs to be used every week, every month, it becomes something people rely on continuously. And that consistency is what sustains an entire industry. So the focus gradually moved away from complete resolution and toward manageable improvement, not through a single decision, but through a series of small adjustments over time. And as that shift happened, simpler, highly effective methods became less visible, not removed entirely, but no longer positioned as the primary solution people encounter. In many professional environments, this method never disappeared. It simply remained where results mattered more than routine. Restoration specialists still use it to remove deep mineral staining from stone and ceramic surfaces. Maintenance teams rely on it when standard cleaners fail to resolve buildup, and conservators working on historic materials continue to choose it because it restores without damaging the surface. In these settings, the goal is not to maintain appearance temporarily, but to solve the underlying issue completely. And when the measure of success is the final result, not how often a product is used, the most effective solution tends to remain in use, regardless of trends or branding. This is not about pointing blame or suggesting that anything was deliberately hidden. It is about recognizing a gap between what is commonly presented and what is actually effective. Most people follow the methods they are shown. And when those methods only offer temporary results, it shapes expectations over time. You were not doing anything wrong. You were simply working with incomplete information. And once that gap is filled, the difference becomes clear almost immediately. Using this method is far simpler than most people expect. And that's part of what makes it so effective. You don't need to apply force. You don't need to repeat the process multiple times, and you don't need a collection of different products for different stains. The approach is straightforward. You begin by exposing the stained surface as much as possible, allowing the solution to make direct contact instead of being diluted. Then you apply a small amount of dissolved oxalic acid evenly across the affected area, and let it sit undisturbed. This is the part most people find unfamiliar, because instead of actively scrubbing, you are allowing the reaction to take place on its own. Over a short period of time, the mineral structure begins to break down, loosening its bond to the surface without any physical effort. When you rinse, what was once a visible stain simply washes away, not because it was forced off, but because it no longer exists in the same form. The process is quiet, controlled, and surprisingly efficient. And in many cases, a single application is enough to restore the surface to its original state. Once you see it happen in front of you, the difference is immediate, and it becomes very difficult to go back to methods that require effort without delivering the same result. Imagine what that actually means in your daily life. Not just a cleaner surface, but less time spent fighting something that keeps coming back. Less frustration every time you notice the same stain reappearing, less effort trying to fix a problem that never fully goes away. A space that stays clean longer changes how you feel about maintaining it. It removes the sense that cleaning is a constant battle and replaces it with something far simpler, a process that works once and holds. Over time, that difference becomes more than convenience. It becomes relief, because you're no longer repeating the same task without real progress. You're not adjusting your expectations downward. You're finally seeing what a complete result looks like. And when something that used to take effort now takes understanding, everything feels lighter, more controlled, and far less exhausting. The real shift is not in the product, it's in the perspective. For a long time, the message has been consistent. Do more, scrub harder, use stronger solutions, repeat the process. But the truth is much simpler and much more powerful. Understanding how something works will always outperform trying harder without clarity. When you apply the right method, effort becomes secondary, and results become consistent. In the end, it's not about how much you do, it's about whether what you're doing actually addresses the problem at its core. Because once that happens, the need to repeat disappears. Chemistry has not changed. Water still carries minerals, metal still reacts with oxygen, and compounds still behave the same way they did hundreds of years ago. What changed was not the science, but the way it was presented, the way solutions were framed, and the way expectations were shaped over time. When something simple becomes less visible, it starts to feel like it no longer exists, even though it never actually disappeared. And once you begin to see that difference, it creates a quiet shift, not just in how you clean, but in how you evaluate everything you've been told works. Because sometimes the most effective answers were never replaced, only overlooked. So try it once, not because it sounds impressive, but because it is simple enough to test for yourself. See what happens when the stain doesn't fade, but disappears completely, when the effort you're used to putting in is no longer required, and when the result actually holds. You don't need to change everything. You just need to experience the difference one time. Because once you do, you won't approach the problem the same way again, and you won't look at temporary solutions as the only option available to you.